companies are global in 2025, and how actually native teams helped all of the Eastern companies to go global without the local entities. But firstly, we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Igor. I'm working as a chief sales officer with the company for the last 4.25 years, pretty much from the beginning. And with me is my dear colleague Skerdi, but I'll give the mic to him so he can introduce himself.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Skerdi. I'm the Vice President of Demand Generation for Native Teams, been with the company for 3 years, and I'm very happy to have you all here today so we can discuss the topic of global expansion from Eastern European companies.
So I guess maybe like we should start with speaking about like the ecosystem and what is the reality of the whole, let's say, wider Balkans, from especially kind of like the startup perspective. I guess like most of the people that are going to be joining the today's webinar are going to be people either that are like trying to expand globally or at least like they're in the initial starting phase. So I think the kind of like the main disadvantage that Eastern Europe has in compared to the West is uh, firstly the educational part. I think the main thing that like lacked, and this is something certainly I guess like you can agree with me that we did from the beginning, especially in the Eastern Europe, which we find as our core region or like hero part of the globe, is education. Just showing and opening all of the options to the people, and I guess that's because like the eastern part kind of like got all of the updates and all of the upgrades a bit later than the west, am I right? So like we're kind of like lacking in terms of how are we adapted and well suited to kind of like feel and take a bite when it comes to like all of the western advantages that are possible and optional, especially from the expansion and kind of like global approach. uh, I would kind of like also, and this is currently maybe like also a question for you also from the marketing perspective. I think that like we're also lacking and kind of like a bit behind when it comes to how are we presenting and promoting all of the companies from the East. I mean, how many companies from the East you know that are kind of like well known like in the West? Not that much, I'm right, but like the companies from the West are well known to like everyone from the East. But again, like I guess you know like a bit more from the marketing perspective on like what are the main issues and criteria that are kind of stopping and slowing down the potential growth that either individuals or companies from the East might have.
Yeah, definitely there are several factors that are contributing to this one. I would say that, the cultural factor is the biggest in a sense on how we change from a cultural perspective when it comes to the way that we behave around employment in general, and then the way that we advertise, and then the way that we conduct the business itself, right? When it comes to Eastern European companies, there are a lot of excellent companies there that they are emerging, and the startup ecosystem is as strong as ever. Of course, it has changed like the whole world after the COVID-19 pandemic, because eventually a lot of companies were not able to work on site, and then they had to work remotely. And by working remotely, what they needed to eventually do is to also think about hiring in multiple countries, which they weren't doing initially. Initially, they were hiring only in country, but they started thinking creatively on how I can hire in as many countries as possible, how I can be efficient. My reps cannot travel to conduct business in one country or the other country, so maybe I need a POC there in order to conduct the business over there. Then the second bigger transition, or let's say significant occurrence that happened, that did not only change the way that the companies behave, but it's kind of changing up the world, is unfortunately the war, in the heart of the Eastern Europe between Russia and Ukraine, which made a lot of people move to different countries. And then for the local companies, it emerged a need to how to hire and to pay these people legally in the countries where they moved. As we know, the migration in the region over there, but specifically in the two main countries, which together, if I'm not mistaken, have around 190 to 100 million people, was vast. And the majority of people who migrated from the region were people that eventually worked in tech, right? Because the ability to work remotely enabled them to move and still keep their jobs. So the companies found themselves with a need to keep their resources because business must continue as always, and at the same time to hire them legally or to make sure that they're getting paid correctly and everything else. Now, with this need, the need for an EOR provider became imminent. Not that before it wasn't needed, but right now it became imminent to uh, get an EOR provider along the way. And Eastern European companies adapted quite quickly because that is a trait of the region itself. People are adaptive. People go with the flow and understand the moment. And then EOR providers like native teams, which by the way we will explain also what an EOR provider is, because maybe some of our audience does not know exactly what it represents, so we can go over that one as well. Igor, I'll leave that to you after I finish my thought. Basically, EOR providers like native teams who initially emerged from the region and specialized and in the region made sure that these companies could conduct business and could stay strong through all the difficulties. And now that the world is becoming more global, and unfortunately the war is still going on, but people are moving constantly in other countries for a better life experience, or for also to just explore, truth to be told, these services become very necessary for any company that wants to have success on a global world.
Yep, I think also like one thing that we can see as a trend in the last 10 years that like um, Eastern Europe is actually bringing and kind of like adding tons of the really like big companies now. Like you can see Bolt from Estonia. Estonia and Poland are like two of the main countries when it comes to like startups that kind of like went global. Am I right? Like you have tons of the companies like I don't know, like Wise. I mean, Wise comes from Estonia, same as Bolt. Like you have a couple of Polish companies, especially in the infrastructure and the energy industry, that are becoming quite big, like and important on a global scene. Also, something that I think like in the past, and this is already also like a topic before we switch to what native teams does and what TR is. Like also something that we're seeing is like in the past, like if you wanted to conduct a business in the West, you needed to open an entity there. And right, like it was initially your company from the States, your company from the UK. But now the trend is kind of like going vice versa, right? Like you're actually a company from the East Europe, you have the offices there, but you're kind of like still kind of like having a headquartering from the Eastern Europe, which wasn't the case prior to the COVID, am I right? Like remote work and all of the changes that happen. I think like it also changed the mindset that people have about. I mean, I think it's a go-to thing from for like the newer and younger generations is that like people don't want to be like in this like nominal zone. They don't want to do the stuff same as like people and companies prior to them did, which means something that was maybe like thing to be ashamed in the past. Now it's becoming a cool feature, right? Like it's cool to be a company from Poland, right? It's cool to be company from Albania, to be first unicorn company from Bulgaria. I don't know. Let's say a kudos to Payhawk and stuff like that. So I think that trend kind of is also what is leveraging and helping all of the young entrepreneurs and people that are just like trying and in general like making and succeeding in something to just like have additional wings in the back. But let me just switch quickly to the EOR and what native teams is and what are we covering. So pretty much also one important factor is that we are coming from the Eastern Europe. Our first region that we opened in 2020, we recently celebrated 5 years of existence. It was East Europe. So if we know something, we know how to kind of like operate here. I'm right. Like the biggest chunk of our internal employees and also additionally the knowledge base sits here. Uh, when it comes to like what are we doing, like we are covering and helping like all of the companies, not just the companies from the East Europe, but global ones to expand and obviously unlock new features. When I say unlock new features, this is something that I had like one really funny call with one potential client a couple of days ago when he came to the call and he said like I want to level up with native teams. So I was like the level up, yeah, kind of makes sense. Leveling up means like let me give you a random example. Like if you're a company from Bosnia and obviously you're employing people from Bosnia, you have let's say I don't know 400K of potential hires that you might have. But if you just unlock the bordering countries, you suddenly are jumping from 400K to let's say 4 million, which is obviously, firstly, helping a lot when it comes to screening and finding the right talent. And this is something that I think falls under the category of what the modern age is bringing, and that's that hiring as part of the business is becoming a big pain in the ass. It's becoming a huge problem for the companies, obviously because of the first the AI tools that can kind of like fake you until you make it. Secondly, because people can sell themselves pretty well, while actually not being that. Uh, so kind of like the realistic approach is better if you have wider pool of talents that you can target on. Secondly, I think also like having a local employees in specific countries. I'm now like coming back to the same example. If you're a company from Bosnia trying to employ, let's say, someone in Germany because you want to have operations and sell there, or just like uh, market your product, it's easier if you have like boots in the ground there. Am I right? Like we did the same. Like when we expanded, because we currently are operational in 7 countries, we have employees in almost every single one of these countries, obviously. And that is helping us to leverage, obviously, the cultural perspective, understand, shape, and adapt the product towards the needs that a specific market or region has. And that's something that you couldn't do that easy like in the past. Am I right? Like you had advisors, you had people that you needed to pay tons of money in order to understand how to be fully operational and compliant, let's say in some country. Well, now like you can just hire one individual throughout native teams and suddenly open the doors towards 40 million new potential buyers, which I think is a huge thing and advantage that like companies from the Eastern Europe are taking. And I hope like moving forward is going to be even more. I think that like in general talents from the Eastern Europe and people that are entrepreneurs here, they're just lacking. Firstly, we're lacking the community, and that's the main kind of topic that has been raised tons of the times on like most of the regional events here. And secondly, we are missing that like one initial spark, and that's just believing in ourselves. I think that like we people from the east less believe that they can succeed than the people from the west. I guess it's a cultural thing, but yeah, hopefully that will kind of change and switch, and we'll have like a different situation moving forward.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Thank you for that, Igor. Now, when it comes to just to, so we can get a little bit of data into this. Uh, for example, what Eastern European companies are doing fairly well is using their diaspora in order to grow, or more like regional diaspora, when it comes to that one. So a lot of Ukrainian companies, for example, are hiring people, Ukrainians that are spread throughout the world at this moment, and a lot of, for example, companies in Poland are hiring Polish people around the world in order to further extend their business. And I want to stop there because this becomes crucial in order for any business to become global. What you mentioned earlier is like you have your company which is successful in country or also regionally in 2 or 3 countries that are around the region, but in order to make this scale and grow globally, you need to make sure that you crack the new markets. And how you can do that, before it used to be very difficult, because before you needed a consultancy over there, you needed to hire people, you needed to go and open an entity, which had a lot of complications. Because in order to open an entity, first of all, you will need to have lawyers, and then you'll need to have accountants, and then you need to understand the local landscape. You need to invest a lot of time to go there and travel, because in most countries you cannot open an entity without physically being there. And then in some countries you can, like for example in Estonia, you can open an entity without being there present. But in most of the countries this is not possible. So you have an investment in time, you have an investment in money, but time is the most valuable currency in my opinion. Then you have an investment in money, then you have an investment in resources there, because you'll need to get the accountant, then you need to get a consultant, and then you need to get a lawyer. All of this without knowing if the specific market will work or will not work for you. What an EOR provider can enable for every company is you go and test the market, you hire one resource through an EOR provider, being that a sales or a marketing person, usually these two departments get the first person hired to do the scouting of the market and to understand if there's a fit for the product over there, without having to go through the risk of everything. And then if the market is a fit, then you continue to hire more people through the EOR provider eventually. And because with hiring through an ER provider, you tackle the second problem. So the first problem was all of this investment that needed to happen without you having the certainty of the market. The second problem is an operations problem, and again, a cost problem. The reason why is because as you scale in numbers, you might be thinking, okay, maybe it's time for me to go and open an entity there. Now, this can be one of the options, of course. What difficulties are going to occur with that one? Still, you are going to need to hire a lot of ops people. Let's say that is a revenue hub for you as a country. Let's say that you're a Ukrainian company, but you want to enter the German market. So you have there people that mostly do sales, they do marketing, or they do customer success, right? Eventually, if you want to open an entity there, you have to hire in-house lawyers, in-house accountants to make sure that you have people who are managing your compliance over there. All of these things that don't necessarily have anything to do with your business. If your business is software development, if your business is digital marketing, if your business is cybersecurity, you're into the tech business. You're not into the ops and managing people business. That is just part of the thing that you need to do. So what you can do, instead of worrying about doing something that is not part as core of your product and core of your services, you can focus eventually on what matters to you really, which is the development or the sales or the marketing in that specific market, and leave this operating side to the professionals in this case, which is what we do, because landing operations, making sure that we're compliant, following local regulations, following payments, salary contributions, and everything is what an ER provider does. So eventually we see a lot of companies right now which are leveraging, and also they are not leveraging only for expansion, but also they're leveraging it to find better work conditions in terms of remuneration. And startups right now, as you know, Igor, from 2020, 2022, 2023, the number of investment is not growing, it's actually coming to on hold, meaning that a lot of companies are working with reduced budgets now. And in this time of efficiency and in times of let's say, I would say, budget, a lack of budget or a lack of investment that is coming from different VCs, companies need to start and think strategically. And how do companies usually do this? We see Eastern European companies either hire in countries where they want to expand, so those are strategic hires in terms of developing new markets, but also tend to go on the cost-effective solution, like for example, either moving their entities somewhere else that is not in the countries where they're located, or hiring in regions like Southeast Asia, or even hiring in the Balkans region, where eventually the cost will be lesser, the cost of employment, and also the salary averages are less than in that region. All of this can be done through an ER provider, and all of this can be done through a strategic thinking that we enable, in terms of, like, we don't only offer the service, but we also help companies in the way that they are going to expand. Reason being that we have a lot of data. We have been doing this for a lot of years. We started in the region, just like you mentioned. So through our internal database, we have the numbers of how much a certain resource for a certain position would cost on a lot of regions in the world, and also the quality of work, because we have the retention rate numbers, we have the companies that are hiring and the quality of the companies that are hiring. And basically we can be also an expansion advisor for whichever company wants to grow on whatever region, of course, that we are covering at the moment.
Yeah, makes sense, Skerdi. Let us answer to the question that we have currently, and then we can switch back to topic. Katya, the question was, among all of the Balkan, Eastern European countries, which countries you have highest success of hiring good English-speaking talent? I think for the millennials and Gen Z, the English is kind of like a normal thing. So again, if you specifically ask by percentages, I think Slovenia and Croatia have the highest amount of good English speakers. That's mostly because they're the closest to the West EU. They had the most tourists, which obviously led to like people being in need to speak good and fluent English in order to obviously cooperate and earn some money. But in general, I think like nowadays we don't have like a specific country that we are targeting if we're looking only for good English speaking talents. I think what we have is that like specific regions and specific countries are have popular roles or specific let's say positions that we are looking for. Like an example, like in Georgia, you have like developers and support and QA. In Armenia is engineering, in Serbia is sales, DevOps, and Ops. Moldova is accounting and similar ones. And obviously, the whole Eastern Europe is really, really, really well suited region for all of the remote roles. So I think on that front, we are not becoming, we're already like a go-to market. I think what switched in the last 10 years is that like, let's say 10 years ago, like you had only entry level positions or customer facing teams being based in the Eastern Europe because it was cheaper to have the office there. But now since we're speaking about remote jobs, you have really senior and like, I guess like highly positioned individuals and talents based in the Eastern Europe that are working for the West companies. I mean, from our perspective, and what we have like as the data is that like the highest salary that we ever had was from a guy who is based in Serbia and he's working as the CTO for like one of the biggest USA IT companies.
Yeah, definitely. On that, Igor, like English literacy is something that it's pretty common in the region, right? And we see that happening a lot due to the factors that you mentioned, and also yeah, that's a great fact that you mentioned. I just remember the customer that we had that was the highest salary that we have ever processed. Now, I would like to make it more simpler for the attendees to understand the process of EOR and how they can go through an onboarding of an employee through native teams, because I think that for those who don't know who you are and haven't worked before, it might be a little bit difficult as a concept, right? So basically, let's say that you have a company and you have multiple people that you have hired, but they are all positioned in different countries. Let me make an example. You're in a company in Bulgaria, but you have a few employees in Macedonia, and then a few employees also in Georgia, right? So what you would need to do eventually to have these people properly employed in order to follow compliance laws, because mind you, every full-time contractor now in several countries is going through a very big difficulty, which is to prove that they are a contractor in country and not an employee. Countries are being very attentive towards the way that contractors are collaborating with companies, because if you're a full-time contractor only for one company, it doesn't make you necessarily a contractor. You're a full-time employee which is using the local system to pay less tax, and countries are being a lot more attentive, and they are chasing down individuals. So it will come a time, and the time is coming because we are seeing it day to day on the conversation that we're having with customers, when the contractor on the other side is saying, wait a minute, like I might have issues with my government if I continue to do this type of collaboration with you, so I need a full-time employment solution. In this case, what eventually any individual will do is go and chase for this solution and find out what it is. The solution for this process is called employer of record. That is a service that is being offered and that we offer as native teams. How the process looks like, it's pretty simple. I would call it hassle-free because of the ChatGPT induced word that we have listened a lot right now, hassle-free. Eventually, you would have a conversation with the reps of native teams or whatever you are provider, even though I would strongly suggest native teams for multiple reasons. And then you will give the data of the employee, depending, all of the necessary information for the employee. And this employee will be hired through the native teams entity in the specific country. The way that it will work, it will be like a triangle contract between the employee and native teams and you, which basically means that the employee is yours, and definitely you will be able to manage the employee over there. Native teams on our site will be managing the local regulations, the compliance, the pension contributions, the taxes, and everything to make sure that the employee gets everything they need over there and that you are covered as an employer. All of this happens through our platform, which is very user friendly for everyone who jumps in there. And then we facilitate also local benefits for the employees. And eventually, if the need comes for you to move the employee from one country to one country, we do facilitate also mobility services through visa sponsorships in a list of countries, not on all of the countries when we offer the UR service, because this is a very complex, migration is a very complex
Especially nowadays,
yes,
the
especially
last
nowadays.
couple of years, yeah, the laws and regulations are being changed, and They're reinforcing like additional layers of security, like when it comes to obviously all of the expats that are trying to move and stay and work from any of the countries, especially in the EU, because of this new like uh, laws that have had been changed like in the last couple of years because of the illegal fluctuation of people there. But anyways, I think like also a couple of important facts that we have is what I also mentioned, that that's the knowledge base, because uh, I mean, in any of the cases, if you're trying obviously to expand globally or at least hire a talent in some specific country, having a knowledge base about like all of the local stuff. When I say local stuff, I mean like tax optimization, additional layers of like protection for you as an employer or employee, or whatever else. Like these things costs and it takes time for you to understand, but like having a partner or a solution like ours is pretty much kind of like overstepping that, and you literally suddenly have knowledge base about 87 countries in your hands without actually moving the finger. I think also like one important fact, and this is something that we spoke Skurdy about, the employment and kind of like the whole screening part, is that we also do like a recruitment. Is not our main proposition, but we offer that as a solution. Something that like we ideally wanted to build from the beginning was all-in-one stop shop, all the 360 degrees company that will cover every single ICP from the beginning till the end. I mean, what we have is, and this is like a couple of really like amazing case studies that we had from the past, is that like we had really small startups like 4 years ago that started working with us from Eastern Europe, started employing slowly people. And then at one point, like once they had, let's say, I don't know, 40 people in Croatia or whatever, they obviously came to the position that it's cheaper for them to run their own entity. But we also offer and cover that part. So we're doing like company as a service as additional layer. We're doing like payroll as a service, which means like you can just open an entity, run your own entity, and we're covering everything in the backend. Again, that means streamlining processes, less bottlenecks, less operational issues, and obviously just one third party supplier, in this case us, who is handling all of that directly for you. In the end, as you said, like being cost efficient means also having more time in your hands. So like all the stuff that I mentioned now means that like your COO, your CFO, your chief HR officer, whatever you have there, or just like you as a CEO, you have much more time in your hands that you can and you should use for actually building whatever you have in your mind, while actually not worrying about any of this stuff. I mean, also a couple of comments that we had from the clients in the past is that like they're always mentioning how easy and streamlined the service that we offer is, and how much actually it helped them just to kind of like address and strategically plan on where and what they want to achieve with the company, because they suddenly had like 87 open markets. They tested out a couple of them. It didn't work. It worked, whatever. But ticking all of these boxes while working just with one partner is much better than, I don't know, let's say having four different ones. And also having a partner for life, as we call it, is something that like obviously is building that relationship to the level that like our retention rates are amazing. And kind of like that stickiness and glutiness that we have with all of our accounts and clients is something that like we're super proud of. And that's mostly because of that human approach. And that's something that is lacking across the globe, not just like in our industry, but like in general. Like whenever you go to the website, you're speaking immediately with a chat AI bottom, right? Like how many times you have the option to speak with a real individual, and the real individual in your local language that is sitting and working from your time zone. Not that much, am I right? But from our perspective, that's something that like we strongly believe, and that's something that we're fighting for from the beginning. And that's something that like all of our clients are actually having huge benefits from. Because again, if you're a company from Serbia that let's say employs someone in the Philippines, you're working in Serbian time zone. If your employee there wants to have or has a question about, I don't know, like some kind of documentation, or like just permits that they need there to fill out whatever, like let's say something for social security or similar, they can speak with our rep who is based there and works in that time zone, which means like no harassment for you. You can literally have like just your regular day work without actually worrying about all of these important facts. Because in the end, like also one additional layer that I will need to mention here is benefits. I mean, you as a startup, like it's super hard to build marketplace of benefits for your employees. And in the end, like what we're seeing is that like especially people in the senior roles are more actually asking for benefits rather than anything else. I'm right. So I mean, you know how it goes. Like also like people that we are hiring are like benefits are like important fact. And again, with us, like you have also like all of the full whole pool of benefits that we have across the globe in your hands, which obviously gives more options that you can offer to the employee or potential talent that you want to hire.
Yeah, definitely benefits is a big one, not only among senior leadership, but also, for every level in the org chart. Definitely something that is being highly requested right now. And I would like to double down on what you said, Igor, in the sense that right now expanding globally is actually the go-to for every company. Every company starts locally, then they need to expand globally, and then we are happy to facilitate, we and other providers of course are happy to facilitate and help companies grow throughout the way. What I wanted to do right now is, because when we made the advertisement for the webinar, we had an option that people could write questions to us, and we have a few of them that are already sent via the form that we had over there. But I would like to invite also the chat here, or also our listeners or viewers in LinkedIn, to add potential questions over there. I will start with the one that were already sent via email, but please, the attendees here, feel free to ask any question that you need. This is a moment for our Q&A session, where we'll try to answer at the base of our capabilities all of the questions over there. But Igor, I will start with the ones that are there, and I will ask you, and then I'll go over the second question myself. In terms of compliance, like, what are the biggest risks when hiring internationally?
The biggest risks for hiring internationally, I think, couple of like biggest risks are firstly like legal complexity, and this is something that we spoke about, which is obviously having this knowledge base in your hands. And it's also like the when I say complexity, I mean like the like obviously let's say if we spoke about this 20 years ago, you would know like all the legislations and laws and regulations in your country specifically. But like now we're speaking about international companies, which means like you need to also like understand everything that is happening, not just in your country, but in every single country where you're operational, or at least where you're planning to be. Second one, we like obviously contractor misqualification risk. And this is something that is happening in the Eastern Europe now in the last couple of years. West EU already like added laws and strict rules when it comes to this part. And that's the like obviously all of the tax offices are reviewing cross-border payments. Third one is the legal setup delays and costs. This is something that obviously, especially when you're in the beginning, is not priority, or not something that you would like love to invest in, especially because you don't know if it will work. That's why like you have with us, you have 87 countries to test. Like you have 87 countries to test. Like, I mean, like it's not a small thing, am I right? And fourth one will be like payroll and currency admin, which means that like uh, I mean, managing a couple of payment tools in a couple of different countries, filling out the all of the documentation, payroll processing and stuff like that. Mistakes that might cost you a lot. Just like literally forget about all of that, like, and just use your provider, because literally, especially in the beginning, like these things are not something that you should worry about. I mean, like if you can have like a helpful assistant and a partner in this sense, obviously you're gonna be having much more time and money in your pocket and hands.
Yeah, definitely, Igor. Those are some of the risks, around hiring internationally. We have Martin here who has a very good questions. How do you handle situation when the employees already passed their probation period, but performance went down, and we want to let them go? Well, Martin, this is a great question, actually. So basically, it all depends on the local legislation of the country where you have chosen to hire the employee. EU countries have different legislation. The European Union is more or less regulated in the same way. More or less, I'm saying, not that is exact. And then the Balkan region more or less is again regulated the same. And basically, we follow through the local legislation per every case. So let's say that your employee is located in Poland, and then they're past their probation period, but the performance is dropping. In this case, what we would do is we will follow the book of regulations in terms of laying off this potential person. If that is your decision, we are going to
I just
present them.
add one thing. Sorry for interrupting here. Like, I think we forgot about the first layer, and this is something that we're suggesting to all of our clients, making the employment contract as complex and personalized towards the role that the individual is going to be working. So that way, like, I don't know, if you have like accountant, and then you have just like, I don't know, doing payroll, I don't know, filling out financial documents. That's pretty simple. Like, can you kind of like cannot catch on just something. But if I don't know, you're working in a fintech industry and you have like a company that is working as a payroll processing tool, whatever, then you can add 15 different layers of the SLA, obviously drafted in the employment contract, that is helping in this case that Skerdi is now speaking about. Sorry, Skerdi, for interrupting. Just wanted to add this, which I think is
No, that's
important.
that's a great comment.
Yeah,
Great
and
comment
obviously
because
my help.
customizing the contract before you actually hire the employee is going to help, because a lot of contracts are broad in the way that they express the relationship between the employee and the employer, and that makes it very difficult for you to prove legally that such performance has been low. That's why the addition of SLAs into the employment contract is something that we see uh, happening a lot right now, and the SLA is nothing other than just the set of tasks and the set of KPIs that such employee needs to achieve. Once you have that set as part of the contract, and then you have your employee failing to reach those KPIs, then eventually, usually, what follows right now is an announcement that you make to the employee, or what we call the process improvement project, when you go with your employee, and then you try to improve their performance only for a short time period, and then if you see no response from the employee side of things, then you proceed with the termination. That again needs to happen according and adhering to the local legislation that we have over there, because in this case, by doing that, we are protecting you, which is the company that is making the layoff, and then we're also protecting somewhat the employee, in the sense that they are getting what's needed according to the legislation. But mostly it's for the company's compliance, to avoid later repercussions or legal entanglements that might happen, because we all have heard that employees, unhappy employees with the way that their layoff went, are suing the companies, and we are protecting our customers as much as we can, following the local legislations. Another question, Igor, that we had is, and this is I think it's a very good one, because a lot of people might think in like exactly numbers or in behaviors. How does the EOR service compare to actually going there and setting up the local entity?
Sorry, the question was
How does EOR change from actually going there and opening a local entity?
well, actually, it's fully different because like literally you're not opening your local entity, meaning like you're just outsourcing to the NER provider. I think also like you mentioned this word that is being like now overused, like which means hassle free, like and obviously streamlining, optimizing processes and the business model. I think that's really important because also what we're seeing like as a pattern is mistakes that we also made in terms of thinking about specifics when it comes to like obviously compliance part regulations, opening an entity, and then just realizing suddenly after losing X amount of time and X amount of money that we don't need that. And when you have the option, as I said, obviously to have all of these potential mistakes as not now mistakes, but actually the options that are free for you, obviously. I mean, not free, but like you're paying just the subscription fee, you don't have any additional costs. You suddenly find yourself in a position that you have tons of space more to be creative, to think outside of the box, and to test out things. I think like the best and the most successful storylines are coming from that. And that's being yourself and kind of like believing your guts to a certain degree. But it's much easier to do that like when you're not losing tons of the money and when you potentially might end up, I don't know, like filling out some law problems or whatever else might happen. I'm right. I mean, in general, the main idea here is that like look at us as like the right hand of the business that you have that is there just to assist and help and ease up all of the really big problems because like bureaucracy, like paperwork and tons of the stuff that we were just speaking about. These are like day-to-day diseases that are happening like to every single company. I mean like if we already like passed and survived all of them, and if we can offer you the solution that is kind of like avoiding the pain and the potential problems that might happen, why not you use it? Again, I mean, look at all of these companies that we mentioned from Poland and Estonia. All of them are international companies. None of them made success story in Poland or Estonia, respectively. I'm right. They made success story like globally, and that's something that all of us we need to have as an kind of like idea. We're living in a. I mean, this world is global. I mean, like everything that we have here in the Eastern Europe, people from the rest of the globe have. I'm right. Just maybe like 6 hours before or 6 hours after. But like in a nutshell, like the stuff are pretty much the same everywhere, which means like uh imagine a couple of things, and this is something that I would like to suggest as an idea. Like think about the stuff that we have here that let's say like somebody from the east or west doesn't have. Test out, try it out. I mean, that's what the Western companies did here. I'm right. Like they brought stuff that we haven't had. I'm right. Like you haven't had a proper burger place before McDonald's. I'm right. But I mean, it came, it happened. You haven't had actually, uh, I mean, the biggest competitor of Bolt, Uber, before USA kind of like came with an idea. Am I right? And it was problematic. Like, plus, like all of the stuff that you bring that are different and changing and trying to shake up the market are gonna be always problematic. But again, if you can test out, if you have an idea that is, I don't know, related to some software tool that we in the Eastern Europe have, but like I don't know, Malaysia or Singapore don't have, test it out to us, employ people there, try to sell the product, try to like penetrate the market. You never know until you try. I think we have one more question, Skerdi. And again, this is actually a question for you. Like, can you maybe just maybe like speak a bit about like some real cases that we had here that just might open like doors or maybe like just lighten up some of our listeners.
Well, actually, to be honest, like when we went, I'll make this example. I was very much surprised, but when we went to the Web Summit, there was an extremely high number of Eastern European founders that were visiting the event. Like we were at our booth, it was actually quite fun because we had a wheel of game playing over there, and the two winners that we were giving, the lucky winner would win 500 euros. And the two of the winners that were there were actually from Eastern Europe, and one of them was Russian, one of them was Ukrainian, but there was like a lot of people coming from Eastern Europe to speak about global expansion. One thing that I noticed there is that most of them did not know that even that EOR existed as a potential service or as a tool that they could use in order to properly expand. And after speaking with them, I remember I had a chat with a Ukrainian company who had a lot of developers in Serbia and in Montenegro. And I remember speaking with a Macedonian company that wanted to make a move in Albania, but they didn't know how to do it and they couldn't find the resources and everything else. And I'm only mentioning these two cases because those are cases that I met there personally, and then I worked through with one of our sales team members to actually make sure that they delivered on that one. The two cases were different. One case was the Ukrainian company already had the people in Serbia and in Montenegro, but it was becoming problematic to maintain them properly, to maintain them because of the contractor agreements, because the fact that they would be seen as employees and everything else. So what they did is they used EOR as an incentive for a better retention, because EOR in itself also helps you have employees for a longer time, because it not only gives us the satisfaction on paying the taxes and making sure that they have a pension and everything else, but also it kind of ties them to a contract with you individually. So this Ukrainian company they had 22 people with us. The bulk of them were in Serbia. So they used EOR as an incentive to have a longer relationship with their employees and to make sure that the employees were not leaving because of the problematics that they have with the contractor agreement. On the other hand, the Macedonian company, which expanded in Albania, of course, they were just trying to expand, so they needed 3 people in the beginning. We helped them recruit the people, so they were looking for 2 salespeople and 1 marketing person. So we helped them recruit, so find the best people for the best price in the country over there, but also to hire them legally, because the contractors there, due to a new legislation, were not accepting to work under a 40-hour-a-week contractor agreement. So these would be 2 other success stories that I can mention on 2 different scales. The Ukrainian company was more like a medium-sized business, where the Macedonian company was on the small business side, on how these 2 businesses, one of them managed to solve a pain point that was the employees were leaving by keeping a better retention through hiring them through EOR and expanding in these 2 markets. And the smaller company, which had limited budget, managed to get very good resources in a country when they had no knowledge about, they didn't know how to conduct business over there, and also to hire them legally and making sure that they actually got the resources, because if they didn't have the opportunity to hire them full-time, they wouldn't even have the resources in the first place. I'm just making these 2 examples because they're more regionally focused, but I can think of tens and hundreds of those just from here. But definitely to also make a recap of everything that we discussed here, because people need to leave here with some key bullet points and things that they should remember. First of all, through your service, you can hire who you want, where you want, and this should be pretty simple as a message, while being compliant. Secondly, EOR enables you to think globally and to be a global company at the moment you decide. So it's only your decision that is stopping you from being a global company. You can decide today and you can hire whatever you want through EOR services. Thirdly, EOR allows you to focus on the core of your business, whatever your business is, without worrying about compliance, without worrying about local legislation, without worrying about how the law of work and employment works in the different regions of the world. And also, EOR can help your global organization have a better retention, have more employee satisfaction. And as we all know, a satisfied employee is very good for business. So if there were the 4 key bullet points that we got out of this discussion, for me personally, it would be these ones.
Thank you, Skerdi. We have just one question from Martin, and then we're going to be slowly wrapping up the webinar. So the question is, do you guys offer the job market research as a service in terms of salary ranges per countries and positions and total cost of employment? Martin, the answer is yes. This is pretty much the essential part of like what we do and what we have as part of our knowledge base. When I said knowledge base, and sorry, this is on me, but like I haven't actually explained what the knowledge base is like having inside. But yeah, all of these market researches and kind of like the intelligence about like the salaries, the positions, and the total cost of employment, which is kind of falling under the payroll category, something that we are doing obviously for all of the countries where we have operations in. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure. Again, if you have any additional questions, you can have our emails. My email is igor@nteams. Skerdi is skerdi@nteams.com. So if you have any question that you didn't want to fill in here, feel free to shoot us an email. We'll be more than glad to help and assist anyhow in like any kind of like idea of you growing your team internationally, or just like trying or testing out whatever project that you have. Anyways, have a nice rest of the Thursday. Have a nice rest of the week. Thank you, Skerdi, again for being co-host here. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. And yeah, see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice one.
Bye-bye.